This is the Daily Rundown, November 15, 2018. Local and national news by KPPP-LP. Hi everyone, this is Cindy.
And this is Duke.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPP-LP Fargo-Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
In local news, North Dakota Department of Health announced today that medical marijuana dispensaries selected for Grand Forks and Williston regions. Bismarck, North Dakota. The North Dakota Department of Health Division of Medical Marijuana received final scores from the review panel tasked with evaluating and scoring complete dispensary applications. 2 entities have been selected to move forward with the registration process. We Mend LLC will be operating as Strive Life and will locate their facility in Grand Forks. HOFW LLC, Harvest of Williston, will be located in Williston. With this current selection, we now have 4 dispensary regions that have entities eligible for registration under the medical marijuana program, stated Jason Wall, director of the Division of Medical Marijuana. The dispensaries registered with the North Dakota DOH will be authorized to sell products to registered qualifying patients and designated caregivers. In addition to the recent selections in the Grand Forks and Williston dispensary regions, 2 entities were selected near the end of September for the Bismarck, Mandan, and Fargo regions. According to state law, all entities selected to move forward must meet additional requirements before being issued a registration certificate from the NDDOH. Dispensaries can purchase dried leaves of flowers and medical marijuana products from either the 2 manufacturing facilities under the medical marijuana program. The Division of Medical Marijuana continues to accept qualified patient and designated caregiver applications. Instructions, video tutorials, answers to frequently asked questions, and a link to access in the online application can be found on the Division of Medical Marijuana's website at www.ndhealth.gov/mm. For questions, please contact the Division of Medical Marijuana at 701-328-1311.
So they did pass the use of marijuana in North Dakota.
Yeah, they had a medical marijuana bill that was passed a couple of years ago, and then the legislature took that bill and they changed it. Actually, it was a referendum that came from the community, and the legislature didn't like it. So they went in and they added things and took things away.
They gutted it?
Yeah, they made it a lot more restrictive. And then this last election, there was another public initiative that was trying to make marijuana decriminalized and for recreational use, and that failed. And a lot of people believe is because this medical marijuana angle has a bunch of companies and a lot of money, and they already got this thing going, and they've been dragging their feet. I mean, it's been 2 years of trying to design this and have these dispensaries become qualified, and also the restrictions on being a patient. You pretty much need to be nearly dead to be able to qualify. So, the state has been really, ramping up who can actually sell this and who can set up shop. And they're finally in a position where they have the people who are qualified that can do it. But they've had that information for a long time.
It's kind of sad that Moorhead and actually the state of Minnesota may actually get to use marijuana and decriminalize its use in the state. Since the new governor-elect took power, he's made statements that indicate that he would be in favor of that throughout the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, and the governor would have to put some legislation in place and get the House and Senate to do it. Minnesota has a medical marijuana law also, and they've been doing similar things in North Dakota. Been dragging their feet in the dispensaries, but there are dispensaries that I think in the Minneapolis region. But again, there you have to qualify. It's like you have to have a debilitating disease. You're almost nearly dead before you actually qualify for medical marijuana in Minnesota.
Well, in Moorhead news, there's an update on what happened with the mayoral candidate battle.
Yeah. The Moorhead news, the election news is still in the news in Moorhead. There was a mayoral race that there was 3 candidates, and one of the candidates was Nazad Brifke. And he's Kurdish, and he was running against Jonathan Judd and Brenda Elmer. Jonathan Judd won the election, but they've been really going after this Brifke. And in the Moorhead News, a judge has dismissed several allegations of campaign violation brought against Nazad Brifke, a mayoral candidate in Moorhead. But the same judge has decided that on one issue, whether Brifke was late in filing a campaign financial report, will be heard by a 3-judge panel. The matter began with a complaint filed with the Minnesota Office of Administrative Hearings on Wednesday, October 31st by Laura Lee Bergen, a resident of South Moorhead, alleging that Briefke campaign failed to timely file complete and accurate campaign financial reports, as well as other claims. Bergen's complaint contained five violations of campaign financial report laws, according to agency documents. After initial review by the agency, 2 alleged campaign issues were dropped, and 3 issues were moved to a probate cause hearing that was held Wednesday, November 7th, the day after the election day. After that hearing, 2 of the 3 remaining issues were dismissed, leaving only one question to be resolved, and that is whether Briefke's campaign failed to file an initial campaign financial report within 14 days of having spent more than $750. According to Office of Administrative Hearings, the question will now be submitted to a panel of 3 administrative law judges who will be assigned to the case within the next 2 weeks. Briefke lost his bid for mayor in a 3-way race with Brenda Elmer, Jonathan Judd, with Judd winning the election.
And it was an incredible election, wasn't it?
Yeah, true. And I think people are just out to get this guy.
Yeah.
$750. I worked on one campaign, and I knew the rules that once you spent a certain amount of money, you had to file these forms, and people have always been kind of lax on these local elections. It's important to have the accountability financially, but someone went after him with 5 violations and trying to expose that he was doing something wrong. And they put that out before the election.
It did. I think it probably had a pretty negative impact on his campaign. I will say this. I am just tickled pink that we had 2 people of color running in the Moorhead mayoral race, and that we now have our first black mayor.
Yes.
That is progress.
Definitely,
to me.
Definitely.
In other local news, people have been talking about President Trump's silence on the Migrant Caravan. A local immigration attorney posted on social media, there are so many posts about how everyone seems to have forgotten the terror of the Migrant Caravan and how now that the midterms are past, the stunt is too. But why in the heck is no one at all paying attention to this new policy memo, which was clearly a result of all that fear-mongering and which came out after the elections? That PDF link to the policy memo can be found on our page Mexican, and I will give information about how you can follow us on Facebook and our other social media sites with more details. The president made asylum impossible for people seeking asylum at the southern border specifically and only. The attorney goes on to say, I keep pointing to this, yelling about this, building 50-foot tall flaming letters about this, and people shrug and ignore it or toss it. Then they go back to the Migrant Caravan. Oh, the fear-mongering was so dumb. Look how no one talks about it now. The President of the United States has invented authority to countermand statute, and in doing so has stripped away yet more due process protections for non-citizens. Under the justification of making regulations consistent with the statute, he has overridden the statute to categorically make people who are eligible for asylum protection ineligible for that protection. This is a huge deal. This is a giant screaming siren of a big deal, and no one cares. I can't seem to make anyone actually pay attention to this, because it is categorically awful, and it goes against the entire founding ethos of the United States and its various treaty obligations, because it condemns lots of people being sent back to their deaths. And if that wasn't enough, what Trump is doing is claiming authority to set policy that directly contravenes statute. You know, what the GOP has been screaming since forever about Obama doing, making law with executive order. A claim that every time they made it was idiotic BS. That's what Trump is doing, but he's not doing it with an executive order. He's going even lower than that. He's setting internal policy, not published regulations or executive actions or anything else that requires a comment period, but just instant effect internal policy to contravene statute. He is creating a new ground for categorical ineligibility for asylum, and that ground is crossing or attempting to cross the southern border without permission. The other grounds are things like involvement in terrorism or murdering or using child soldiers. I mean, really terrible things. This is white supremacist BS overruling statute with executive branch policy. This is basically the definition of a totalitarian fascist behavior.
And we're not paying attention to it. Like the author of this post said, for our president to just change things and also just have these internal policies that are, potentially unconstitutional, they can't be challenged. And it's just that the executive branch of government just has to do whatever the president says, because it's the president who's in charge of, that branch of government. And I heard about this. I heard about that, no one will be able to seek asylum, and it's only specifically aimed at the southern border. The ACLU and Southern Poverty Law Project did file a lawsuit in California about this, but I haven't heard if that's been getting any steam, if a judge has heard it, whether there's potential for an injunction. I'm not sure. But, it sounds, if this is just one thing, the thing about this is it's a huge, greasy, slippery slope that the president will just enact changes in our government without us having any sort of input, and it's just going to be, that's the way it is because the president said so. And he does it through like just writing a tweet, or he just says it out loud. There, bam, policies changed. Our government is acting differently because he is in charge of the government. He is in charge of everything that runs in this country in those institutions except for the Senate, the House, and the Supreme Court. So he can do whatever he wants, and he is doing what he wants.
And, the ramifications of this are many, but the ramped up hatred and abuse of power is escalating and has escalated because of this hateful type of rhetoric and these actions. In the Tucson Sentinel, there's a report about a Border Patrol agent who killed a 16-year-old boy in Mexico about 6 years ago, I believe. Border Patrol agent Lonnie Schwartz testified on Tuesday morning that he was defending himself, another agent, and Nogales police officers when he walked up to the border fence and fired 16 rounds in 3 volleys into another country, Mexico, shooting and killing a 16-year-old boy named Jose Antonio Elena Rodriguez in 2012. I fired my weapon to protect myself, my partner, and that other officer from a deadly force situation, Schwartz said. There was no question. They were rocking us, and I stopped that threat, he said, his voice rising. Schwartz faces manslaughter charges, part of a retrial, after a jury found him not guilty of murder earlier this year for shooting and killing Elena Rodriguez in Nogales more than 6 years ago. Schwartz said that the incident happened in seconds and that he drew his H&K P2000 pistol and walked up to the fence when he saw 2 adult-sized shadow figures cock back nearly in unison to throw rocks. He fired his weapon, and he saw 1 person go down. Schwartz fired 16 rounds in 34 seconds in 3 salvos on the night of October 10, 2012, fatally shooting the 16-year-old Mexican boy in his own country. Elena Rodriguez died face down on a sidewalk on a Calle Internacional of the Mexican side of the border, just 4 blocks from his home, down a 14-foot embankment from where Schwartz stood on the U.S. side of the border, on the other side of a 22-high-foot border fence. The autopsy shows that Elena Rodriguez was hit 10 times in the head and in the back. 1 shot ripped through his back, shattering 5 vertebrae before it nicked his aorta, before coming to rest beneath his breastbone. Another slicing through the helix of his ear, punched through the bottom of his skull, and transected both hemispheres of his brain before coming to rest just beneath his scalp. Prosecutors have argued that one of Schwartz's first shots hit the boy in the back, and while the wound was catastrophic, the boy was still alive when he was hit 9 more times, including the last shot to the head. However, the defense argued that Schwartz's first shot killed him, and subsequent shots were the result of a confusing situation in low light. The rocking had to stop right now, Schwartz said, as he remembered thinking. Why did you throw up? Chapman asked him. Because I had just discharged my weapon at a human being, said Schwartz. I never wanted to do that. Never. Why did you shoot? Chapman asked. We were all in danger of being hit by rocks, sir, Schwartz said.
Wow, this is terrible. Makes me sick. Makes me sick that the person could justify killing a person for throwing rocks, and that also that person was on the other side of a fence in another country. And for our U.S. soldiers that are all on the border right now, Trump has already said that we will meet rocks with guns. So he's referring to the story. He's actually, in that statement, justifying the use of deadly force to people on the other side of a border fence. And I remember when this story came out, it was like, what United States is shooting into Mexico? That can't be. Back in the day when everybody's thinking that these things can't happen. That's not right. That's illegal. Well, this still has not been resolved in the courts. And also that the person who shot him, and the excessive force. 16 times. Like I said, we had watched a show that shows the impact of bullets on the body and the different type of bullets from different types of, rifles and pistols. And the larger military weapons blow up inside your body and they cause so much harm. It's fatal death from bullets like that. And this kid was shot 16 times. And they're going to justify that the first shot killed him, so the other 15 don't count. It kind of seems like that's their defense.
Basically.
Yeah. It's like their defense is that, well, the first shot killed him, so the other shots aren't an issue. So the first shot, since they felt they were in danger, is justified.
Well, I think that they're trying to belie the fact that shooting someone for allegedly throwing rocks is in itself excessive force, unnecessary force. You're not going to be killed from a rock being thrown at you, but you most definitely will be killed from a bullet.
Yeah.
Trump has echoed the same sentiment of shoot them if they have rocks. So this is something that Mexicans have known, police and other authorities have used as an excuse to murder unarmed, completely innocent Mexicans and other brown people around the border. There's a long history of police and other authorities, including the military, gunning down completely unarmed women, children, and men, and then claiming as justification for those murders that they believed the person to be armed with a rock.
Yeah, that's right. And there was actually a Supreme Court case with a man they shot, I think, 11 times. Was reaching for his wallet in an apartment because the officer feared for his life. So they have used that ever since, that if they fear for their life, they can use deadly force, which is wrong.
Amadou Diallo is the man that you're thinking of.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter, I think he was shot many more times than that. The fact of the matter is that what I'm talking about goes back hundreds of years.
Oh, yes.
Where we were just being hunted and murdered like animals. And the justification was to point at the ground next to the dead body and say, oh, that rock there, that's what the weapon was I was defending myself from.
Okay.
You could always find a stone or rock somewhere near the dead body to justify the murder, right?
Mm-hmm.
With black people, it's been, I thought he was going for a weapon. So
Yeah.
as long as you can say that you thought they were reaching into their waistband or making an unjustified move that frightened the cops,
Mm-hmm.
it's an okay thing to do, to murder people that are completely innocent. But just know that for people of color that have heard these stories one too many times, we know that these are excuses to commit murder.
Definitely. Well, CBS News reports progressive Dems back off on abolish ICE at a first meeting since midterms. Some of the most prominent progressive members of Congress are backing off the idea that they'll focus on abolishing the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE agency, a proposal many of them pushed during the midterm campaign. At the Congressional Progressive Caucus first press conference as Democrats won control of the House, leaders fielded questions about whether they would continue to push legislation to get rid of ICE. We're absolutely still going to be pressing that, said Democratic Representative Mark Pocan of Wisconsin, the caucus co-chair. However, I think the main goal of getting out of the gate is going to be the issues that we ran across in all districts, around health care, around good-paying jobs, around dealing with the culture of corruption. Pocan, who in July released a statement saying ICE must be abolished, added, I still think many of us still have issues of immigration reform as well a very, very high priority. The slogan, Abolish ICE, became both a rallying cry and a lightning rod during the 2018 election cycle for the far left across the country. Representative-elect Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat from New York, was standing with Progressive Caucus leaders at Monday's press conference. She helped polarize the idea during her successful insurgent campaign. Ocasio-Cortez, who identifies herself as a Democratic Socialist unseated 10-term incumbent Joe Crowley during the Democratic primary. Several other representative-elects who also called for the abolish of ICE, including Ivana Presley of Massachusetts and Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, also attended a news conference. Pocan and two fellow Progressive Caucus leaders introduced legislation over the summer aimed at scrapping the agency. One of the lawmakers who introduced the legislation, Representative Prima Jayapal of Washington, took issue with the attention paid to the Abolish the ICE slogan and wondered whether if any of the assembled reporters had read her bill, which she said focuses on reforming the immigration system. I would really love it if all of you would read the bill and if you would report on what was in the bill and how we propose building immigration that is humane, where enforcement is transparent, saves taxpayers' dollars, and is effective, Jayapal said. In July, Jayapal's office issued a press release about the bill with the headline, Members of Congress introduce legislation to terminate ICE and transfer critical functions to other agencies. Later Monday, Jayapal told reporters she had never used the Abolish ICE slogan. She said progressives need to stop talking the president's fame for this future. ICE is the agency that is not accountable, humane, and transparent, and effective. So I think that this agency, as it exists, is not doing a good job for us. That doesn't mean we are getting rid of the enforcement overall, and I think there's just a real distinction between abolishing ICE as an agency as abolishing the function. And it would be great for people just to think about that, Jayapal told CBS News. After the legislation was introduced over the summer, House Republicans tried to focus a vote on the bill in an apparent effort to put Democrats on the record abolishing ICE. The progressives reported by saying they would vote down their own bill and called the move a political stunt, according to The Hill. The bill has not been considered yet on the floor.
Want. Why are Democrats so disappointing? I mean, seriously, they've won in a landslide they haven't seen in 40 years because people are reacting to the hatred of this administration and the real dangers that this president has put the entire country in, including a constitutional crisis, which we are currently under. And the Democrats are just going to back off of every rallying cry that put them in power? I mean, seriously, how is this not a slap in the face to the people that voted you into office?
Definitely, and they're quickly doing it, too. It's just a day after election, a week after elections. They're already backing down on all the issues that were being brought up during the campaign that we all thought we'd have hope that they would change. And, I think that ICE should be abolished. I mean, I've been seeing that agency ever since it was developed as being something that is horrible and deadly to people of color in this country, and it serves us no purpose, and it should be abolished. And I was really happy that legislators were actually taking it up, or considering actually looking at this agency and at least trying to have more oversight and more control, and also the potential of just getting rid of it. I thought, oh, this is great. But now when they actually can do that, they're backing down.
Everybody needs to remember that this agency did not occur before 2003. It was created, as much of immigration policy has been, to target people of color. A lot of white settlers in this country have said, come in the legal way like my ancestors did. Your ancestors didn't have to come in under these policies. They were basically allowed to come in if they reached our shores. And that was what was done with people of color as well, until, the policies of racism seeped into our politic in such a way that people felt that they needed to put quotas on the number of people of color coming into this country versus white people. And that has now morphed into an out-and-out war against refugees and undocumented immigrants at our southern border. And it's absolutely wrong. The ACLU reports that secret CIA documents show a plan to drug test prisoners. Thanks to a recent ACLU victory in federal court, we know much more about how CIA doctors violated their medical oath to first do no harm. One of the most important lessons of the CIA's torture program is the way it corrupted virtually every individual and institution associated with it. Over the years, we've learned how lawyers twisted the law and psychologists betrayed their ethical obligations in order to enable the brutal and unlawful torture of prisoners. Now that the ACLU has won this case, they've released a 90-page account of the CIA's Office of Medical Services role in the CIA torture program, a secret history written by the top CIA medical official, whose identity remains classified. The history reveals that CIA doctors were hunting for truth serums to use on prisoners as part of a previously secret effort called Project Medication. The CIA studied records of old Soviet drug experiments as well as the CIA's notorious and discredited MK-Ultra program, which involved human experimentation with LSD and other drugs on unwitting subjects. The CIA doctors involved in Project Medication wanted to use versed psychoactive drug similar to those used in MK-Ultra on prisoners. The CIA ignored lessons from its own history after MK-Ultra was shut down. The CIA director testified in 1977, quote, "It is totally abhorrent to me to think of using humans as guinea pigs." But decades later, the agency decided to experiment on humans again, testing pseudoscientific theories of learned helplessness on prisoners. While Project Medication never got off the ground, CIA medical professionals remained critical participants in experimenting with torture. Just like the government lawyer who tried to give unlawful torture a veneer of legality, the secret history reveals CIA doctors were indispensable to the effort of legitimizing the program. Perhaps the most striking element of the document is the CIA director's willful blindness to the truth of what they were doing. CIA doctors decided that waterboarding actually provided periodic relief to a prisoner because it was a break from days of standing sleep deprivation. Similarly, CIA doctors decided that when a different prisoner was stuffed into a coffin-sized box, this provided a, quote, relatively benign sanctuary from other torture methods available. CIA doctors described yet another prisoner who cried, begged, pleaded, vomited, and required medical resuscitation after being waterboarded as, quote, amazingly resistant to the waterboard. Incredibly, CIA doctors concluded that the torture program was reassuringly free of enduring physical or psychological effects. The truth is that CIA torture left a legacy of broken bodies and traumatized minds. Today, with a president who has vocally supported torture and a new CIA director who was deeply complicit in torturing prisoners, it's more important than ever to expose the crimes of the past, recognizing the roles by the lawyers, doctors, and psychologists who enabled torture is critical to making sure it never happens again.
Well, I wish it would never happen again, but just exposing it, I don't think does enough.
No.
You know, this is something that's been talked about. There's been movies made about it. Men Who Stare at Goats. You know, it hints at these programs in our military, and you know, we have a long history of abusing our prisoners. You know, because our prisoners are our new slaves, and you know that this is being done. And people aren't outraged. And also what you do with your outrage, it goes back to those legislators, to those Congress people that can have oversight. You know, the Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA is a function of our government. Of course, it's under Trump, under Trump's control. But still, it's a function of our government, and that we are condoning torture, and we're torturing, you know, people on U.S. soil there are some constitutional issues, and we don't argue the Constitution. And, we talk about it, and we just make claims, but this goes right down to basic human rights, and I think it's horrible.
We have a history of concentration camps and putting people of color that we don't like, whether they're American citizens, naturalized citizens, legal permanent residents, workers with visa, people here that are undocumented, or what have you. We have routinely placed people like that, as we have recently done under the Trump administration and continue to do, separating families, torturing and sexually assaulting women, children, and men, and we continue to do it. And we do it under the shroud of secrecy for as long as we possibly can. And when the truth ever manages to see the light, we suppress our feelings about it, we sublimate them, and we go on as if nothing had happened.
That's right. And a lot of times, even when I was saying that we need to hold these agencies accountable through looking at the constitutionality of it, it takes years. When you actually want to fight this in court, it takes years and years to resolve something. And so what happens in people's minds, we forget about it. We forgot about this story. It hasn't been in the news. And, it takes years and years to actually surface the things. And where's the accountability? So we don't have a good remedy in the system we have right now. And people rely on that to perpetuate this.
In fact, when we have the natural organic reaction of shock and horror to information coming out about the government's, caging of children, separating of families, the killing of unarmed black men and women or brown men and women in this country, the ever-increasing toll of missing and murdered black and brown women in this country without any resolution, we are often told to subdue our emotions and to wait for further information. Don't talk about it now. Wait for further information. We can't know for sure whether this is the sign of something bad or whether this might just be, confusion on the facts. So we've taught people to sublimate their feelings of shock and horror, and also to stop them from acting on those emotions and doing something about these horrors that we allow to happen in our country every day.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the New York Post had an article, teacher suspended after student wore KKK outfit in class. A teacher in Missouri has been suspended after a student dressed up as a member of the Ku Klux Klan as part of a history class presentation. District officials said a ninth grader at Poplar Bluff High School dressed as a member of the KKK on Friday as students in the American history class made presentations pertaining to amendments to the U.S. Constitution. The student in question, wearing a white robe and hood, was part of a group assignment to the 15th Amendment, guaranteed voting rights regardless of race or color, KFVS reports. District officials have since suspended the teacher as an investigation continues, but they don't believe the student was acting with intent to offend or discriminate against the other students, according to the station. There is no context for this. Poplar Bluff High School District Superintendent Scott Dill told KFVS, "There is no point at which anyone in our public school system is going to say that this is okay. It is very obvious that this can't happen in any setting anywhere, and we will do our best to ensure that we do what we do best, which is education." District officials will now take steps to ensure teachers are providing age-appropriate historical context on key topics in a responsible manner. And we will make sure that our students, our teachers, and our community understand the context, understand what is acceptable and what will never be acceptable. Dill continued, "A letter of apology was sent to the unidentified teacher and read to students early Monday," KFVS reports. "I made a mistake on Friday during our skit assignment," the teacher wrote. "I let a student wear an inappropriate costume that was unacceptable and hurt many people's feelings. As a professional in the room, I should have known better. I'm sorry," the teacher's apology continued. "I am so sorry for making this mistake, and I hope that you can forgive me and we can work on this together. I understand the healing and forgiveness take time. I am absolutely okay with that. It wasn't long before a photograph of a teen dressed as a Klansman soon became circulated on social media. Friday, a former student who graduated from the old school last year shared a Facebook post depicting the student, but she had not been in the classroom at the time. The Springfield News leader reports, "I've never heard of a history teacher who said it was okay to use a KKK costume for a project," graduate Brianna Anthony told the newspaper.
I don't understand why we still have conversations or debates, I guess, about whether or not the intent of the person was racist.
Yeah.
Or the intent of the teacher was racist. Or whether or not what this person or the student did, the teacher or the student, merits some kind of punishment. What white people have to realize is that as people of color in a country that murders us, lynches us disproportionately for the slightest error, we have to walk a constant tightrope from birth to death, from cradle to grave. We have to watch ourselves in how we look at people. If you looked at a white woman the wrong way, it could get you lynched, and it did.
Yeah.
If you spoke, you had to watch the words you said and how you said them because they could get you killed. Ask Sandra Bland.
Yeah.
You have to walk the way you walk. You have to watch the way that you're walking and what you're wearing. Because if you move your body in the wrong way, a cop could say you were reaching for your waistband, or they thought that you were reaching for a gun, and you will be dead. You have to worry about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, which could be anywhere, including your own bed, in your own house. You have to worry constantly about the white people around you and how comfortable they are. You have to read the room and the temperature of every single white person you come into contact with in every scenario that you are in so that you can survive it. But what about white people? They have generationally been given a pass to worry about their surroundings, to worry about whether or not they're going to run into us. They're going to look at us the wrong way. They're going to say something insulting or hurtful because 99.9% of the time that they do and say all of these quote-unquote careless things, they don't die as a result of it.
That's true.
They don't even get punished. They can't stand to even be reprimanded or told that what they're doing is horrible, racist, or wrong. In fact, even telling them can be something that gets you killed.
Yeah.
So how are we supposed to hold white people accountable if we're not even allowed to call what they're doing wrong or racist or punishable?
Exactly. And even in this news story, that was not the focus. They were trying to cover their butt. And this would have never surfaced if it wouldn't have been on social media, because this stuff goes on all the time. And white people, we give each other a pass. It's like, a kid comes into class with a KKK outfit. It's like, first thing should have been, whoa, stop right there. And if the history class was going to talk about racism in the United States and talk about the Klan and talk about all the other supremacist groups, it would be planned out in advance. You would know the information is coming. It would be well planned that you could actually educate the students on these issues of our history. But just to pop up a Klansman outfit as part of a history lesson of that day and not do anything about it and put the full brakes on it and reprimand that student and take that thing right out of the classroom and apologize that this could even happen. It was like the student brought a gun into the classroom, and it should have been treated that way, and it wasn't. They're only backpedaling to try to apologize and trying to save their supremacy and then go on as usual and just brush it away underneath the rug.
Protect their right to be supremacists and not be called on the carpet for it, and also not have any consequences because of their supremacy.
Yeah.
White people feel entitled to be racist, wrong, and criminal in many cases, and to not be punished because they don't see any of their white counterparts getting punished for those things. So why them? Here's another perfect example of this entitlement. Newsweek is reporting that a Kansas official told a black woman he's a member of the master race and to don't ever forget that. Kansas City commissioner is facing calls to apologize after telling a black woman that he is part of the master race during a routine public planning meeting. The remark was made on Tuesday by Leavenworth County Commissioner Louis Klemp, a white man, and seemingly directed at a woman presenting for an architecture firm. It has been branded as racist, and local media reported it was not the first time Klemp has sparked controversy. I don't want you to feel like I'm picking on you because we're part of the master race, he said in a meeting. You have a gap in your teeth. You're the master race. You have a gap in your teeth. You're the master race. Don't ever forget that. Bob Holland, another Leavenworth County Commissioner, told KCTV5 that Klemp, who is reportedly due to leave his position on January 15 next year, should make an apology. What's this master race, Holland said on Wednesday. None of us are a master race. We're all Americans. We are all human beings. I think he's a racist. I do. I think he owes an apology to that woman. I think he owes an apology to the whole commission and the county. BSHB-TV reported that Klemp was not elected to his role as commissioner, but appointed by the Republican committee after another member resigned due to ill health. When approached by the news outlet, Klemp claimed his comment was meant as a joke. But Holland told KSHB-TV, I'm ashamed of one of our commissioners and what he has done. We shouldn't be labeled as Leavenworth County, the racist county. That's the way I feel we are being labeled. It was not the first time he had criticized his Leavenworth colleague. Last year, Kemp made local headlines after comments he delivered regarding Robert E. Lee and George Washington in a routine meeting to set to approve the county's holiday schedule. Quote, not everyone does them all because we have Robert E. Lee. Oh, God. Robert E. Lee, wonderful part of history, the commissioner said, referring to the Confederate commander during the American Civil War. Klemp said in the meeting that his great-great-grandfather had owned a slave and claimed that George Washington would never be given a holiday because he owned slaves. If we're going to have Martin Luther Day, we don't have a why don't we have a George Washington Day? I think George Washington was a pretty important guy, he said, before going on to ask if Oprah Winfrey would be given a holiday. Holland said at the time Klemp had embarrassed the county with his remarks. Mr. Klemp certainly embarrassed Leavenworth County to the extreme, Holland stated. I just believe that he embarrassed himself, his family, and our Leavenworth County taxpayers.
Well, boy, to give him a pass. He's been in there for a little while, and he was appointed. He wasn't even elected to a county board, a county commission, that runs the county. And this stuff is coming up right at the end of his term. That guy's been spouting this stuff out at every meeting and talking out loud about this sort of stuff. And he's sounds very uneducated. There used to be a Washington's birthday holiday. They changed it to President's Day. It's Washington, and there's been all sorts of white supremacist holidays in this country. The guy is very uneducated.
There is a President's Day, and there used to be a celebration for the different presidents' days.
Yeah.
For the different presidents, but they rolled them all up into one, and it's President's Day, and it's...
Yep. So, he doesn't even know his own history. And the other commissioners are just trying to get out of the way and not get blamed themselves for allowing this guy to continue on. And, what do you do when you have someone who's been appointed or elected to a position? There are probably remedies that we don't actually try. There's impeachment. There's all sorts of remedies to get rid of somebody who is not fit to be in that position. And the other county commissioners let this guy slide because he's an appointed term and figured he'd be out of there by the term ending, and the term hasn't ended yet, and they're in the news. So they are backpedaling strong.
Yeah. And I have to just break down some of the things that this guy said because, there's a lot of hemming and hawing from the, morally outraged commissioners that are saying he should apologize. He is a racist. I'm glad there's one white person that can agree that his comments were racist.
Yeah, really.
For once. But what have they done? Beyond hand-wringing and saying that they don't want to be labeled. I mean, I think that phrase right there is very telling. He's not concerned with ending the racism or how this impacts black and brown people who live in this town, who know that this man is the county commissioner and that this kind of language is tolerated on the county commission. It's not that he's worried about. He doesn't want that label of being racist county, Leavenworth County. That's his main concern.
Yeah.
And if they were really concerned about being labeled as racist, they would punish racists. There would be some kind of accountability. I mean, what do you make of this statement that he just feels bad that they're going to be seen as a racist?
Well, again, it's just that it's not owning it. It's just saying it's that guy over there that causes stuff, and he's not taking any responsibility because he's part of the we. And it's very common for people on these boards and commissions to look at the person who's doing the thing that's messed up or being very racist and just pointing their fingers at that person, saying that's the problem over there, and I share no responsibility in it. And again, like I said earlier, that the county commissions are accountable for whoever's on their commissions, and they've let this guy slide. They've let this guy say things. You know, they're reporting on it very late in the game when he's actually going to... It's once they're found out. They've been found out. They've been enabling this racist to be on their commission, and they haven't done anything about it. So you can just deflect that and just say, it makes us all look bad. Yes, it does. And you look bad for not doing anything about it. So you got to be a lot stronger in your condemnation of the person, and also take some remedies. I mean, what are they going to do about this guy? Just apologize for him and then spend the next 2.5 months doing their business as usual?
Yeah, pretty much. But one of the things that I see that they seem to be ignoring is what he is saying. He is celebrating slavery. Mm-hmm. As a county commissioner, he's celebrating slavery. He is celebrating a Confederate general. He is defending the rights of slave owners and saying, I don't think that black people like Oprah Winfrey and Martin Luther King should be celebrated in this country as long as slave owners like Washington and my great-grandfather are being ignored because they're important people. Slave owners and those who fight for keeping slavery in this country, like Robert E. Lee, are, I think he would argue, just as important, if not more important, than Martin Luther King to celebrate.
Yeah, and the guy has a platform. He has a county commission, has a platform, which is really dangerous, and they've let him have that platform. Mm-hmm. Get him out of there. They should impeach him, suspend him, get rid of him, and get him off that commission.
And as long as they don't, they are co-signing his racism and his terrorism of black and brown people living in that county. They are endorsing it. So, buyer beware.
Yeah, definitely. Axios reporting. Fox News backs CNN in lawsuit against Trump White House.
Wait, what?
What? Fox News is supporting CNN's lawsuit against Trump administration.
What?
Fox News is actually supporting the CNN lawsuit against the Trump administration over the White House's revocation of Jim Acosta's press pass, and plans to file an amicus brief in the case, according to a statement from the network president, Jay Wallace. Fox News supports CNN in its legal effort to regain its White House reporter's press credentials. We intend to file an amicus brief with the U.S. District Court. Secret Service passes for working White House journalists should never be weaponized. While we don't condone the growing antagonistic tone by both the president and the press at recent media avails, we do support a free press, access, and open exchanges for the American people. 12 other news organizations announced they would be joining Fox in filing an amicus brief in support of CNN. The AP, Bloomberg, First Look Media, Gannett, National Press Club, NBC News, New York Times, Politico, Press Freedom Defense Fund, EW Scripps, USA Today Network, Washington Post. Wow. What's an amicus brief? Tell me a little bit more about what that is.
An amicus brief is, the word amicus comes from, it's the word Latin for friend. So it's a friend brief. It's a supporting brief that can be filed by any interested party that has a similar standing. So, because Fox News is another reporting agency, they have similar standing to be concerned about what the White House is doing in arbitrarily picking who can report news from the White House. And in so doing, they are saying that they too could end up being targeted by the White House in having their press credentials removed, which I highly doubt.
Yeah.
However, they're standing on the premise that they're another media outlet.
Yeah, I think I don't know, it's hard for me to gauge their motivation, but, I think Trump would love to just have Fox News as the only reporters in the press corps, and actually Trump has been arguing with this lawsuit, not this one, but the other one that was filed by CNN itself. His lawyers have been arguing, not really him, but his lawyers have been arguing that he has every right to revoke anyone from being in anything when it comes to his functions. That, do they expect him to let every person into the White House and get a pass to see the White House? No, they have to selectively decide who can actually be given access. Therefore, when it comes to press events, he has the same right. He can choose who can be there, and they can have this, whatever they want to do. It's their process. They can do whatever they want to do. So that's been their argument in court in the original CNN filing. But now that Fox has come out, I was wondering what other news agencies were talking about supporting CNN, but I wondered what is Fox going to do? And then we watched a little bit of Fox, and there they were saying, the CNN has violated, and the White House is wrong in this. And I thought, are we watching Fox News right now? And I thought, wow, they are going to take that route. And here they've done it through illegal action.
Yeah, I was really surprised by that. I was not surprised by the fact that their viewers retaliated against them almost immediately and said that they were dead to them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and a large number of Fox viewers expected Fox to be a loyalist propaganda mouthpiece for President Trump to the bitter end.
Wow.
So I'm not sure how that happened. Maybe the owner of this news outlet decided that they wanted to preserve some semblance of actual, journalistic integrity and ethics. Who knows?
Yeah.
It is quite shocking, but it is also very telling that their viewers had such a negative reaction to them doing what all these other news agencies like the Washington Post and Politico and NBC News and so many others did in support, and the AP in support of CNN.
Yeah.
The news agencies finally, years after President Trump threw out one of the first journalists, Jorge Ramos, they've stood in unison rallying behind Jim Acosta, another Latino. I mean, he's Cuban, of Cuban descent. So it's, I guess it's heartwarming to know that the press is willing to stand up for their rights. A little bit late, but I think that it's an important case going forward. We'll be definitely watching that one. The Roots also has reported that white women wore hoodies to a Tennessee mall to test the theory that the mall's policy banning hoodies was racist. After footage of 4 men being escorted out of the mall in Tennessee for wearing hoodies inside, 4 white women wore hoodies to the same mall to see if the policy was meant for everyone. And yep, you guessed it, the women were able to walk freely around the mall with their hoodies both up and down without ever being shown the exit. According to Raw Story, the initial incident that garnered national attention was captured by Kevin McKenzie, a black former reporter for the Commercial Appeal, who noted that he started recording the incident at the Wolf Chase Galleria in Memphis, Tennessee, after watching a white security guard tailing the group of young black men like he was a cat after mice. For reasons I didn't hear, one young man in what appeared to be a nylon blue and white jacket with a hood that was not on his head was handcuffed by a Memphis officer and led away as my video rolled Mackenzie told the Memphis Flyer. And that's when a black sheriff's deputy approached me and told me I was also breaking the mall's rules. After being issued a misdemeanor citation, Mackenzie added that the mall's policy was discriminatory, but Indianapolis-based Simon Property Group, which owns the shopping center, said the policy was there to make people feel safe. And by people, they mean white people. And by safe, they mean absent of black men. So several white women decided to use their privilege to see if the rules applied to all mall patrons and wore hoodies to see if they would be escorted off the premises. It just struck a chord on us that we could do that, Sherry Innes, one of the women, told Fox 13. We could walk through there, we could take pictures, we could wear whatever we wanted. Shannon Arthur, another woman who participated in the experiment, posted about it on her Facebook page. Sometimes our hoods were up, sometimes our hoods were down, Arthur wrote. If a security guard spotted us with our hoods up, they very politely asked us to take them down. One guard said it was because they need to be able to identify everyone's faces, so we said sure, took them down, walked on, and then put our hoods back up a bit later. Repeat and repeat. No threats. Point made. Mackenzie told the TV station the young black men who were asked to leave the mall didn't have their hoods pulled up over their heads before the police got involved, and Innes said she and her friends proved a point. We're not against law enforcement, no rules at all, but if they're enforced equally, I'm up for that, Innes said, and we made a total point that it is not enforced equally. Your thoughts, Duke?
Well, on one hand, it's like this feel-good white story that white people went out and tested something. Testing is something that the HUD does. They test for discrimination, and they'll send a couple, like a mixed-race couple, out to look for an apartment. And if a landlord says, "Oh, the apartment's been rented, you can't have it," and then they send a white couple over there, and they get the apartment. The testing is a qualified, authenticated way of testing issues around racism. They were doing it. It looked like they were doing a stunt to me. I think that, without them doing it, people already knew what they were doing. That people, and the whole idea that hoodies, did they not sell any hoodies in that whole mall? Is there not a single store in there that sells a sports jersey or something with a hood on it? I mean, all sorts of jackets have hoods on them too. But if it's specifically a sweatshirt type hoodie or something that looks at, someone from the black community would be wearing, it is obviously focused on people of color, the whole policy. So these white girls going out and doing this test, I think that they had little risk. I think they thought they were really risking things, but they really, were using their privilege to do what looks like a political stunt to make themselves look like they're more, aware of the issues and that they're actually trying to prove the point. If they would have followed it up with a demand or a legal action to basically get rid of that policy, and they used it for that, then I would have believed them a little bit more. But they kind of looked like they were just doing their own grandiose stunt, in my opinion.
I agree with you completely. And if they had, people know that these kinds of laws are racist. We had a similar law here where they banned sports jerseys and baseball caps from a restaurant, and people said that they wore them and that they were white and that they never got called out for it, and that the policies were aimed at making sure black and brown people didn't go to those restaurants. So if we know that, white folks that really want to make an impact could bring statute to their city council that bars businesses from passing these discriminatory laws in their town, because when they just merely go and experiment as to what they're doing is flaunting their privilege and the fact that, yes, they can get away with doing this stuff and they won't have any repercussions. And of course, that doesn't really help anyone but the egos of the ladies and gentlemen that are doing it. Well, I hope that you've enjoyed our rundown for today. If you want to get more details on all of the news that we've shared here, make sure that you go to facebook.com/Mexican online, facebook.com/People's Press Project, and facebook.com/KPPP Radio. You can also follow us on Twitter at media_PPP and subscribe to our YouTube channel at Duke1517. That's your daily rundown.